A gentle woman denied entry to Flight Academy, labeled too soft for combat. Then she volunteered for a suicide mission that no one expected to survive. "They said I was too emotional to fly," she whispered, handing her Medal of Honor to the stunned flight instructor. "Too emotional to save millions of lives." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Jessica Reeves moved through the halls of the United States Naval Air Station Pensacola with quiet determination. Unlike many of the confident cadets striding past in crisp uniforms with squared shoulders, Jessica carried herself with a softer presence. Today she wore a simple navy blue blazer over a white blouse, paired with tailored gray pants and sensible black flats. Her chestnut hair was neatly pulled back in a low ponytail, and her only jewelry was a small silver compass pendant, a gift from her grandfather, a former test pilot. The prestigious flight training facility buzzed with morning activity. Senior officers barked commands at groups of recruits while instructors hurried between briefing rooms, clutching folders of flight plans and performance evaluations. The air carried the distinct scent of jet fuel mixed with the salty breeze from the nearby Gulf of Mexico. Digital boards displayed training schedules and weather reports, critical information for the day's flight operations. Jessica approached the Advanced Tactical Training Office, a simple plaque marking the entrance to one of the most selective programs in military aviation. She'd been anticipating this interview for months. After graduating at the top of her class in preliminary flight training and acing every simulator scenario they'd thrown at her, this was the final hurdle before specialized combat pilot training. She took a deep breath, straightened her blazer, and knocked firmly on the door. "Enter," called a gruff voice from within. Jessica stepped into a sparse office dominated by a large oak desk. Behind it sat Commander Richard Blackwood, a decorated combat pilot with 30 years of service and a reputation for being as unyielding as the aircraft carriers he'd landed on. His salt and pepper hair was cropped in a military precise cut, and his face bore the weathered lines of someone who had squinted into countless horizons. The walls around him displayed photographs of fighter jets, distinguished service medals, and a large map of global conflict zones. Two other officers flanked him, Major Diana Walsh, a stern-faced woman with calculating eyes who oversaw pilot psychological evaluations, and Colonel James Harrington, the base's chief tactical instructor, whose combat experience in 3 wars made him a living legend among cadets. "Cadet Reeves reporting as ordered, sir," Jessica said, standing at attention. Commander Blackwood gestured to the single chair positioned in front of his desk. "Take a seat, Reeves." Jessica sat down, maintaining perfect posture, her hands resting lightly on her knees. She'd rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, prepared answers for every possible question about flight mechanics, emergency procedures, tactical decision-making. "Your technical scores are impressive," Blackwood began, flipping through her file. "Top marks in navigation, weapons systems, flight theory." "Thank you, sir," Jessica replied. Major Walsh leaned forward. "However, there are concerns about your temperament for combat aviation, Cadet Reeves." Jessica felt a small knot form in her stomach, but kept her expression neutral. "Ma'am, your instructors note that you show hesitation in simulated combat scenarios. You consistently try to find non-confrontational solutions, even when direct action is clearly called for," Walsh continued, her tone clinical and detached. "Flight Lieutenant Pearson specifically mentioned your reluctance during the Tehran hostage extraction simulation." Jessica nodded slightly. "I completed the mission objectives, ma'am. By finding an alternate extraction point that added 7 minutes to your operation time." Colonel Harrington interjected, speaking for the first time. "Those 7 minutes could mean the difference between success and catastrophic failure in a real-world scenario." The alternate route avoided civilian casualties and reduced the risk of anti-aircraft fire, sir, Jessica countered respectfully. The mission parameters prioritized personnel safety over speed. Commander Blackwood's eyes narrowed. Combat isn't clean, cadet. Sometimes hard choices must be made in seconds, not minutes. We need pilots who can pull the trigger without hesitation when lives are on the line. Jessica held his gaze. I understand that, sir. I believe making the right decision is as important as making a quick one. The three officers exchanged glances, a silent communication that sent a chill down Jessica's spine. Cadet Reeves, Major Walsh said, folding her hands on the desk, your psychological profile indicates high empathy scores and a strong aversion to causing harm, even in simulated environments. These are admirable human qualities, but potentially problematic traits for a combat pilot. Jessica felt her chest tighten but kept her breathing steady. With respect, ma'am, I believe empathy makes me a better pilot, not a worse one. I can anticipate both ally and enemy movements by understanding human motivation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, Colonel. Harrington scoffed. Combat isn't a psychology experiment, cadet. It's about executing missions efficiently and effectively. Your technical skills are undeniable, Commander Blackwood added. But this program requires more than just knowing how to fly. It requires the mental fortitude to make impossible choices under extreme pressure. Jessica sensed where this conversation was heading but refused to surrender without making her case. Sir, I've completed every mission assigned to me. My decision-making process may differ from traditional approaches, but my results speak for themselves. Blackwood closed her file with a decisive snap. Results in controlled environments, cadet. The battlefield offers no such luxuries. The commander stood, signaling that the interview was reaching its conclusion. Cadet Reeves, after reviewing your performance and consulting with your instructors, we've determined that you're not suitable for the advanced tactical training program at this time. The words hit Jessica like a physical blow, but years of discipline kept her expression composed. Your flight skills would be better utilized in search and rescue operations or transport divisions, Major Walsh suggested, her tone softening slightly. Roles that align more naturally with your temperament. Jessica remained seated, her mind racing to process this devastating setback. Sir, I've dedicated everything to becoming a tactical pilot. My scores in all technical areas exceed program requirements. I'm requesting reconsideration. Commander Blackwood's expression hardened. This isn't a negotiation, cadet. Our decision is final. May I ask on what specific grounds I'm being rejected? Jessica pressed, struggling to keep her voice level. You lack the necessary aggression for combat scenarios, Colonel Harrington stated bluntly. You're too gentle for this line of work, Reeves. Some would call it a compliment. Being too gentle isn't a disqualifying factor listed in any training manual, sir, Jessica countered, a rare edge entering her voice. Major Walsh's eyes flashed with irritation. Cadet, your reaction right now is precisely what concerns us. Even faced with rejection, you're seeking compromise rather than showing the fire we need to see. Fire doesn't always manifest as aggression, ma'am, Jessica responded. Sometimes it's determination. Commander Blackwood moved toward the door, clearly ending the discussion. Your transfer orders to Search and Rescue Training Division will be processed by 0800 tomorrow. You're dismissed, Cadet Reeves. Jessica stood, her world crumbling around her, but her posture remaining perfect. Request permission to appeal this decision through official channels, sir. Blackwood's jaw tightened. Permission denied. The needs of the service come first. Cadet, this isn't personal, it's about putting the right people in the right positions. Two other cadets were waiting outside, both men with confident postures and the unmistakable swagger of those who had never doubted their place in the world of military aviation. They exchanged knowing glances as Jessica emerged from the office, having clearly overheard portions of the conversation. "Better luck in the rescue choppers, Reeves," one muttered under his breath as she passed. Jessica kept walking, her steps measured and controlled, despite the hurricane of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. This wasn't just a setback, it was the death of a dream she'd harbored since childhood, watching her grandfather's stories of the skies come alive in her imagination. The long corridor stretched before her, suddenly seeming endless. Other trainees and instructors moved past, some offering curious glances at her rigid expression. Jessica maintained her composure until she reached the relative privacy of the female cadets' locker room, mercifully empty at this hour. Only then did she allow her shoulders to slump, bracing herself against a row of metal lockers as the reality of what had just happened washed over her. Everything she had worked for, the countless hours studying flight manuals, the physical training, the simulator sessions that stretched deep into the night, all dismissed because they thought she was too soft. Jessica opened her locker and stared at the small collection of personal items inside. A photograph of her grandfather in his flight suit, standing beside his F-4 Phantom. A worn copy of The Right Stuff, with dozens of highlighted passages. A handwritten note from her flight instructor at basic training. "The sky belongs to those who refuse to stay grounded." She touched the compass pendant at her neck, remembering her grandfather's words when he'd given it to her. "Navigation isn't just about finding your way. It's about knowing who you are when the path disappears." Jessica closed her locker with a decisive click. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. If traditional channels were closed to her, she would find another way forward. The military was vast, with multiple paths to the cockpit she dreamed of commanding. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact she'd saved months ago, but never used: Commander Eleanor Martinez, her grandfather's former colleague, who now worked in the Pentagon Special Aviation Programs Division. Jessica had avoided using family connections, determined to succeed on her own merits, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Martinez answered on the third ring. "This is Commander Martinez." "Commander, this is Cadet Jessica Reeves." "You knew my grandfather, Captain Thomas Reeves." There was a pause on the line. "Tom's granddaughter." "Yes, he spoke highly of you. What can I do for you, Cadet?" Jessica took a deep breath. "I need your advice, ma'am. I've been rejected from advanced tactical training despite top technical scores. They say I'm too gentle for combat aviation." Martinez sighed. "Let me guess, Blackwood and his dinosaurs still running the show at Pensacola? They haven't evolved past the Top Gun mentality of what makes a good pilot." "Yes, ma'am," Jessica confirmed, surprised by the commander's candid response. "Listen carefully, Reeves," Martinez said, her voice lowering. "The aviation world is changing. We need diverse approaches and mindsets, especially for the kinds of operations we're developing now. What they call too gentle, we might call precisely what we're looking for." Jessica's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, ma'am?" "I can't discuss details over an unsecured line," Martinez replied. "But there's a program you should know about, highly classified. We select candidates who show exceptional flight skills, combined with unusual psychological profiles, especially high empathy and creative problem-solving." Jessica could hardly believe what she was hearing. "How would I apply for something like that?" "You don't apply, Cadet. We identify potential candidates through service records and performance data. You've been on our radar for some time." Jessica leaned against the locker, stunned. "I have? Your grandfather may have mentioned you once or twice," Martinez said, a smile evident in her voice. "But your performance speaks for itself. We've been tracking your simulator results. Your Tehran solution was particularly interesting to us. Minimizing casualties while still completing the objective shows exactly the kind of thinking we value." Hope flickered to life in Jessica's chest. "What should I do now?" Accept the transfer to search and rescue for the time being, Martinez instructed. Complete the basic training there. Those skills will be useful regardless. I'll make some calls and have you reassigned within 3 weeks. You'll receive new orders that neither you nor your current commanders can question. May I ask what this program involves? Jessica ventured. Not yet, Martinez replied firmly. But I can tell you it involves experimental aircraft and missions that require pilots who can think beyond traditional combat parameters. You'll be flying, Cadet Reeves, just not the way Blackwood and his old guard envision. Thank you, Commander, Jessica said, gratitude flooding through her. Don't thank me yet, Martinez cautioned. Where you're going will test everything. You are in ways you can't imagine. What Blackwood calls weakness, we see as strength, but that doesn't mean the path will be easy. As Jessica ended the call, she felt a curious mix of emotions: disappointment at the day's rejection, but also a strange sense of anticipation. Perhaps this setback wasn't the end of her journey, but rather a redirection to something even more significant than she had imagined. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of routine training exercises with the Search and Rescue Division. Jessica threw herself into learning helicopter maneuvers and rescue protocols, determined to excel even in this unexpected detour. Her instructors noted her exceptional spatial awareness and steady hands qualities that made her a natural at precision flying. Exactly 22 days after her rejection from the tactical program, Jessica was summoned to the base commander's office. Captain Lawrence, a stern woman with shrewd eyes, handed her a sealed envelope bearing classified markings. These are your new orders, Cadet Reeves, Captain Lawrence said, watching her carefully. I don't know what strings you pulled, but these come directly from the Pentagon with highest priority clearance. Jessica accepted the envelope with steady hands. No strings, ma'am. Just following my assigned path. Captain Lawrence raised an eyebrow. Whatever the case, you're to report to Andrews Air Force Base at 0600 tomorrow. A transport has been arranged. Pack only essential personal items. Everything else will be provided at your new assignment. Yes, ma'am, Jessica replied, maintaining a neutral expression despite the excitement building inside her. As she left the office, Jessica could feel the curious stares of other officers and cadets. Word had spread quickly about her mysterious Codier reassignment. The same cadets who had smirked at her rejection from tactical training now watched with undisguised confusion as she crossed the courtyard with her new orders. Jessica returned to her quarters and carefully opened the classified envelope. The documents inside provided minimal information, just a reporting time, location, and the cryptic designation, Project Nighthawk. The orders were signed by General William Daniels, Air Force Chief of Special Operations, a name that carried significant weight in military circles. As Jessica packed her few belongings, her mind raced with possibilities. Whatever Project Nighthawk was, it represented a second chance, an opportunity to prove that her approach to flying had value, that being too gentle wasn't a liability but potentially an asset in the right context. The following morning, a military transport plane carried Jessica and 3 other silent passengers, all bearing similar sealed orders, to Andrews Air Force Base. From there, they were loaded onto a windowless transport vehicle that drove 4 hours to an undisclosed location. When they finally emerged, Jessica found herself standing before a massive underground facility built into the side of a mountain, its entrance disguised as a commercial mining operation. Armed guards verified their identities before escorting them through multiple security checkpoints into the heart of the facility. Deep within the mountain, Jessica was led to a briefing room where Commander Martinez waited alongside several senior military officials and civilian scientists. On the wall behind them hung a single photograph of an aircraft unlike anything Jessica had ever seen, all sweeping angles and innovative design elements that seemed to defy conventional aerodynamics. Welcome to Project Nighthawk, Cadet Reeves, Commander Martinez said, extending her hand. "We're being too gentle for traditional combat is exactly what makes you perfect for the most important mission of your life." Jessica shook the commander's hand, her eyes drawn to the strange aircraft in the photograph. "What exactly is Project Nighthawk, ma'am?" Martinez gestured to the image. "The future of aerial infiltration, and the reason we've been looking for pilots exactly like you. Pilots who can think beyond aggression to find solutions no one else would consider." One of the civilian scientists stepped forward. "We've developed an aircraft with revolutionary stealth capabilities, not just radar evasion, but a complete systems approach to remaining undetectable. But its unique properties require a pilot with exceptional adaptability and restraint. The kind of pilot who looks for alternatives to brute force," Martinez added meaningfully. "The kind Blackwood rejected for being too gentle." Jessica looked around at the assembled experts, then back at the aircraft. "What's the mission?" General Daniels, a man with piercing eyes and a reputation for brutal honesty, spoke for the first time. "The most critical mission since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Cadet, a mission with almost no chance of survival, but one that could prevent millions of American deaths if successful." Jessica felt a chill run down her spine as Martinez gestured toward the briefing table. "Take a seat, Cadet Reeves. What we're about to tell you doesn't leave this room. You're about to understand why traditional combat pilot psychology isn't always what this country needs to survive." As Jessica sat down, the lights dimmed and a projection appeared on the wall, satellite imagery of a remote mountain complex with Russian and North Korean markings. The briefing that followed would change everything she thought she knew about modern warfare, her own capabilities, and the true meaning of courage. 4 months later, Jessica Reeves sat in the cockpit of the experimental Nighthawk aircraft, running through pre-flight checks as dawn broke over the classified airfield. The sleek black craft represented the pinnacle of American aerospace technology, a hypersonic stealth platform with advanced electromagnetic countermeasures that rendered it virtually invisible to conventional detection systems. In the control room, Commander Martinez watched through the reinforced glass as technicians made final adjustments to the aircraft. Beside her, General Daniel studied the latest intelligence reports with a grim expression. "Are we certain this is our only option?" Martinez asked quietly. Daniels nodded without looking up. "The biological weapon is scheduled for deployment in 36 hours. Conventional strikes would trigger their dead man switch and release the pathogen anyway. We need someone to infiltrate their airspace undetected and neutralize the facilities' power systems before they can initiate launch." "And we're sending her alone?" Martinez pressed. "Multiple aircraft would increase the chance of detection," Daniels replied. "This is a true suicide mission, Eleanor. You know that as well as I do." Martinez's jaw tightened. "She knows the odds." "Yes," Daniels agreed. "But does she truly understand what we're asking her to do?" Inside the cockpit, Jessica completed the final system checks, her movements precise and measured despite the weight of the mission pressing down on her. 4 months of intensive training had transformed her from a rejected cadet into one of the most skilled pilots in the program, perhaps in the entire Air Force, though her name would never appear in any official record. The Nighthawk responded to her touch with unprecedented sensitivity. Unlike traditional military aircraft designed for combat pilots with aggressive tendencies, this craft had been engineered to reward finesse and subtle control inputs. Jessica's gentle approach to flying made her uniquely suited to handle its revolutionary systems. A voice came through her headset. "Nighthawk, this is Control. Final authorization received. Mission is go. Repeat, mission is go." Jessica took a deep breath, centering herself. "Nighthawk confirms. Beginning launch sequence." As the canopy sealed around her, Jessica thought briefly of Commander Blackwood and the others who had deemed her unfit for combat flying. If only they could see her now, preparing for a mission that would take her deeper into hostile territory than any American pilot had gone since the Cold War. But this wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. This was about the millions of lives depending on her success that required exactly the qualities they had dismissed as weaknesses. The experimental engines hummed to life, their sound barely louder than a whisper, despite the enormous power they generated. The Nighthawk began to move forward, gathering speed with astonishing acceleration. "Nighthawk, you are cleared for vertical takeoff," Control announced. Jessica engaged the revolutionary lift system, and the aircraft rose smoothly into the pre-dawn sky. No conventional runway needed. No thunderous jet noise, just the whisper of displaced air as the Nighthawk ascended rapidly to its operational altitude. "Good hunting, Nighthawk," came Martinez's voice, uncharacteristically soft. "Remember your training and trust your instincts." "Understood, Control," Jessica replied, her voice steady despite knowing the unspoken truth that hung between them. This was almost certainly a one-way journey. As the Nighthawk accelerated toward its target halfway across the globe, Jessica settled into the meditative state she had perfected during training. The mission would require 12 hours of continuous flight, navigating through multiple defense systems using routes no conventional military strategist would consider viable. This was why they had chosen her, not despite her gentleness, but because of it. Because she could see patterns others missed, could find pathways through enemy defenses that didn't require brute force or conventional aggression. The qualities that Commander Blackwood had dismissed as weaknesses were about to become America's greatest hope for survival. The Nighthawk sliced through the stratosphere, a silent shadow against the darkening sky. Jessica monitored the advanced stealth systems as she approached the first major challenge, a sophisticated Russian early warning radar network. According to every military expert, penetrating this defense grid undetected was impossible. Conventional pilots would have sought gaps in coverage or attempted to overwhelm the system with electronic countermeasures. Jessica took a different approach. Rather than fighting against the radar waves, she worked with them, adjusting the Nighthawk's revolutionary adaptive skin to absorb and redirect the energy in ways that made the aircraft appear as nothing more than atmospheric disturbance. "Nighthawk, this is Control. You're approaching Russian airspace." Martinez's voice came through the secure channel. "Defense grid is active and at heightened alert." "Understood, Control," Jessica replied calmly, initiating Pattern Echo. Pattern Echo was a flight technique Jessica had developed during training of seemingly erratic series of subtle course adjustments that mimicked the movement patterns of migratory birds. To the radar operators below, if they noticed anything at all, the signature would register as a small flock of geese, not an aircraft. Jessica's hands moved with delicate precision across the controls, her touch light but confident. The Nighthawk responded like an extension of her own body, the neural interface technology translating her intentions into immediate action. The first radar installation passed beneath her, its powerful scanning beams sweeping harmlessly past the Nighthawk. No alarms, no interceptors scrambled. The too gentle pilot had just accomplished what no conventional combat aviator could have achieved. "First checkpoint clear," Jessica reported. No indication of detection. In the control room, Martinez exchanged a significant look with General Daniels. "She did it," Martinez said quietly. "She's through the first layer." Daniels nodded, his expression still grim. 1 down, 3 to go, and then the facility itself. The mission had been deemed impossible by conventional military standards. The target, a hidden biological weapons laboratory in the remote mountains between North Korea and Russia, was protected by overlapping defense systems. Any detected approach would trigger the immediate release of the pathogen, a genetically engineered virus designed to target specific DNA sequences common in the American population. Intelligence estimated the potential death toll at 30 million. If deployed, conventional strikes had been ruled out. Special Forces insertion was impossible given the location and time frame. The only option was a single pilot in an experimental aircraft, penetrating multiple defense grids to reach the facility and disable its power systems before the weapon could be deployed. A suicide mission by any definition. Yet Jessica had volunteered. Without hesitation when Martinez had explained the stakes. Now 4 hours into the flight, Jessica approached the second defensive layer, a network of satellite-based infrared sensors designed to detect engine heat signatures. This was where most stealth aircraft would fail, their engines producing too much heat regardless of their radar-evading capabilities. Nighthawk initiating thermal masking, Jessica announced, activating the aircraft's revolutionary cooling system. The Nighthawk's engines redirected heat through a complex network of superconducting channels, dispersing it gradually rather than releasing it in a concentrated exhaust plume. The cockpit temperature dropped noticeably as the system diverted additional power to the thermal masking technology. Jessica's breath fogged slightly in the chilled air, but she remained focused on the instrument readings, making continuous micro-adjustments to maintain the perfect balance between performance and stealth. "Control, passing through thermal detection grid," she reported. "All systems nominal." Martinez monitored the satellite feeds, watching for any indication that the North Korean or Russian systems had detected the Nighthawk. The screens remained clear, no alerts, no sudden shifts in defensive posture. "She's clear of the second layer," a technician confirmed, "still completely undetected." Martinez allowed herself a moment of hope. Perhaps this impossible mission wasn't so impossible after all, not with a pilot like Jessica Reeves at the controls. Back in the Nighthawk, Jessica prepared for the third and perhaps most challenging defensive layer, a cutting-edge quantum radar system that theoretically could detect even the most advanced stealth aircraft by measuring disturbances in the quantum field itself. "Nighthawk, be advised," Martinez's voice came through with a note of tension. "Intelligence indicates the quantum radar is operating at peak capacity. Facility is on heightened alert due to regional military exercises." Jessica processed this information, considering her options. The Nighthawk's quantum distortion system had been designed to counter this exact technology, but it had never been tested against an operational quantum radar. Understood. Control. Adjusting approach vector. And activating QDS. The quantum distortion system engaged with a barely perceptible hum. Unlike conventional countermeasures that attempted to jam or fool enemy sensors, the QDS worked by creating a perfect quantum echo of the surrounding environment, effectively making the Nighthawk disappear into the background noise of reality itself. It was here that Jessica's unique flying style proved most valuable. The QDS required perfect harmony with the aircraft's movement. Any aggressive maneuver or sudden control input would create quantum inconsistencies detectable by the enemy system. The gentleness that Commander Blackwood had mocked was now the key to America's survival. Jessica closed her eyes for a brief moment, syncing her breathing with the aircraft systems. When she opened them again, her movements became fluid and intuitive, guiding the Nighthawk through the invisible web of quantum detection, like water flowing around stones in a stream. Minutes stretched into an hour as she navigated the most complex defensive system ever created. A single mistake would mean instant detection and mission failure. The lives of millions hung on her ability to maintain perfect control under extraordinary pressure. "Approaching final checkpoint," Jessica reported, her voice betraying no sign of the intense concentration required. Quantum field density increasing. In the control room, the tension was palpable. This was the moment of truth. No simulation or test had ever fully replicated the conditions Jessica now faced. "Nighthawk were detecting increased quantum scanning activity," Martinez warned. "They may be responding to something." Jessica adjusted her approach once more, reducing speed and altering her flight path to blend with the natural air currents. flowing over the mountainous terrain. The Nighthawk systems responded instantly, the neural interface interpreting her intentions before she even completed the thought. "Control, I'm adjusting to mimic mountain air turbulence patterns," Jessica explained. "Their sensors should register this as natural atmospheric behavior." It was a technique she had theorized during training but never had the opportunity to test using the aircraft's revolutionary systems, not to fight against nature, but to become indistinguishable from it. A combat pilot would have attempted to power through the detection grid, relying on speed and electronic warfare to survive. Jessica instead chose to disappear into the very fabric of the environment. Long seconds passed in silence. Then, "Nighthawk, this is Control. You're clear of the quantum detection grid." No indication of alarm or response from target facility. A collective exhale swept through the control room. Jessica had accomplished what military strategists had deemed impossible: penetrating 3 overlapping defense systems without detection. Now came the most dangerous part of the mission. The biological weapons facility was built into the side of a remote mountain, its entrance disguised as a mining operation similar to the Nighthawk's home base. According to intelligence, the power systems that maintained the weapons containment and launch capabilities were located in a heavily shielded underground chamber. To disable those systems, Jessica would need to deliver a specialized EMP device directly to the facility's main air intake, the one vulnerability in an otherwise impenetrable target. The EMP would temporarily disable all electronic systems, preventing the weapon's deployment long enough for a secondary team to neutralize the threat permanently. "Nighthawk, you're 20 minutes from target," Martinez informed her. "Final approach should begin now." "Understood, Control. Beginning descent and final approach procedures." Jessica guided the aircraft lower, using the mountainous terrain to mask her approach. The Nighthawk systems continued to disguise its presence, blending with the natural electromagnetic environment of the region. As she descended toward the target, Jessica could now visually identify the facility, a series of industrial structures nestled against the mountainside, surrounded by security fencing and guard posts. From this distance, it looked like an ordinary mining operation, betraying no hint of the monstrous weapon contained within. "Visual confirmation of target," she reported. "Security appears normal, no indication they're aware of our operation." Jessica reviewed the mission parameters in her mind. She would need to approach at precisely the right angle, release the EMP device into the air intake, and then execute a maximum performance climb to escape the blast radius. The timing had to be perfect too early, and facility security might spot the device too late, and she'd be caught in the electromagnetic pulse herself, losing all control of the Nighthawk. Even if everything went perfectly, her chances of escaping were minimal. The EMP would temporarily disable regional defense systems, but once they came back online, she would be deep in hostile territory with limited fuel for the return journey. Everyone involved understood the likely outcome. This was, in the truest sense, a suicide mission. "Nighthawk, this is General Daniels." A new voice came through her headset. "I want to personally confirm your understanding of the mission parameters and expected outcome." Jessica recognized this for what it was, the general giving her one last chance to reconsider, to acknowledge the near certainty that she wouldn't be coming home. "General, I understand the parameters completely," she replied without hesitation. "The mission objective takes priority over extraction. I accepted those terms when I volunteered." There was a pause before Daniels responded. "Very well, Nighthawk. Proceed with the operation. And thank you for your service." Jessica adjusted her flight path, aligning with the approach vector that would take her directly over the facility's main air intake. The Nighthawk responded perfectly, descending to just 100 meters above the ground. "Final approach initiated," she reported. EMP device armed and ready for deployment. In the control room, Martinez watched the live satellite feed with growing tension. "She's right on target," she murmured. "Perfect approach vector." Beside her, General Daniels nodded grimly. "She's a better pilot than anyone gave her credit." 4. Blackwood and his dinosaurs never understood what truly makes an exceptional aviator. On the targeting display, Jessica watched as the release point approached. The air intake was now visible, a large industrial structure designed to pull fresh air into the underground facility. According to intelligence, it connected directly to the main power distribution center. "Target locked," she announced. "Deployment in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. With precision timing, Jessica released the EMP device. It dropped silently toward the air intake, its specialized casing designed to allow it to be pulled into the facility's ventilation system. "Device away," she confirmed. Beginning evasive maneuvers. Jessica pulled the Nighthawk into a steep climb, accelerating away from the target area. The MP was set to detonate 30 seconds after deployment, just enough time for it to be drawn deep into the facility's infrastructure. 20 seconds to detonation, Martinez counted down. "Nighthawk, continue your egress. Maximum speed. Recommended." Jessica pushed the aircraft harder, climbing rapidly to put as much distance as possible between herself and the impending electromagnetic pulse. The Nighthawk's engines responded with a surge of power, driving her back into her seat with crushing force. 10 seconds. 5. Detonation imminent. A blinding flash erupted from the facility, visible even from Jessica's rapidly increasing altitude. The EMP had detonated, sending out a powerful electromagnetic wave that would fry every electronic circuit within its radius. Almost immediately, Jessica's instruments flickered. The Nighthawk had been hardened against EMP effects, but the pulse was more powerful than anticipated. Warning lights flashed across her console as various systems reset or failed entirely. "Control, I'm experiencing system fluctuations," she reported, fighting to maintain control of the aircraft as it bucked in the turbulent air. "Primary flight controls still responsive, but navigation and communication systems are degraded." There was no immediate response. The EMP had disrupted communications temporarily. Jessica focused on stabilizing the aircraft, using the backup mechanical systems to maintain control while the primary electronics recovered. After what seemed like an eternity, Martinez's voice broke through the static. "Nighthawk, do you copy? Mission status?" "I copy, Control," Jessica responded, relief evident in her voice. "Target neutralized. Confirming complete power failure." At the facility, no signs of backup systems activating. Satellite imagery confirmed her report. The biological weapons facility had gone completely dark, all power systems disabled by the precision EMP strike. The weapon could not be deployed without those systems, giving the secondary team the window they needed to move in and permanently neutralize the threat. "Excellent work, Nighthawk," General Daniels' voice came through. "Begin your extraction route immediately. Regional defense systems will be coming back online soon." Jessica checked her damaged navigation system. The EMP had affected more of the Nighthawk's electronics than expected. Fuel systems were compromised, engine efficiency reduced, and the stealth systems were operating at minimal capacity. The cold reality settled over her. With the damage sustained and fuel reserves dwindling, reaching friendly airspace was virtually impossible. "Control, be advised," she reported calmly. "Aircraft sustained significant system damage. Calculating maximum range with remaining fuel and current engine efficiency. Extraction to friendly territory not possible with current parameters." Silence greeted her words as the control room absorbed the implications. "Understood." "Nighthawk," Martinez finally responded, her voice tight with emotion. "Alternative extraction options are being evaluated." "Stand by," Jessica knew what that meant. There were no alternative options, not from this deep and hostile territory, with a damaged aircraft. The mission had always been classified as likely one way, but now that probability had become certainty. Rather than panic, Jessica felt an unexpected sense of clarity. The mission had succeeded. Millions of lives had been saved. Her purpose had been fulfilled in the most meaningful way possible. "Control, I'm going to attempt to reach the Sea of Japan," she decided. "If I can make it to international waters, perhaps extraction becomes more viable." It was a desperate plan with minimal chance of success, but it gave the control room something to work with and gave Jessica a goal to focus on besides the inevitable. "Copy that, Nighthawk. We're calculating optimal route now," Martinez replied, clearly grateful for Jessica's initiative despite the grim outlook. Jessica adjusted her course, pushing the damaged aircraft toward the distant coastline. The Nighthawk's revolutionary design was proving its worth even in this compromised state. Any conventional aircraft would have already fallen from the sky. "Hostile radar systems coming back online," a technician's voice warned through her headset. "Detection likely within 3 minutes at current stealth capacity." Jessica considered her options. With full functionality, the Nighthawk could have easily evaded detection. In its current state, discovery was inevitable. Once detected, enemy fighters would be scrambled, and with her compromised systems, she wouldn't stand a chance in aerial combat. A different pilot, the kind Blackwood had wanted, might have chosen to go down fighting, to engage the enemy in a blaze of glory. Jessica had a different idea. "Control, I'm implementing Echo Sierra protocol," she announced. Echo Sierra was a theoretical emergency procedure she had developed during training, a way to maximize stealth capability by diverting power from all non-essential systems, including life support. It would give her perhaps 30 additional minutes of enhanced stealth at the cost of rapidly depleting oxygen in the cockpit. "Negative, Nighthawk," General Daniels cut in sharply. "Echo Sierra will compromise life support beyond sustainable levels." "With respect, sir, it's our best option for extending the mission timeline," Jessica countered. "I can maintain consciousness long enough to reach the coastline." There was a brief pause before Martinez responded. "It's her call, General." "Nighthawk, you're authorized to implement Echo Sierra at your discretion." "Thank you, Control." "Initiating." Now, Jessica activated the protocol, watching as non-essential systems shut down one by one. The cockpit lights dimmed, temperature controls ceased, and the air began to thin as life support powered down to minimal levels. Almost immediately, the stealth indicators improved dramatically. With power redirected to the critical electromagnetic and quantum masking systems, the Nighthawk once again became nearly invisible to enemy detection. Stealth capabilities restored to 87%. Jessica reported, her breathing already becoming more measured to conserve oxygen, continuing toward extraction point. In the control room, Martinez watched Jessica's biomedical readings with growing concern. The pilot's oxygen levels were dropping faster than predicted, and her core temperature was beginning to fall as the cockpit cooling accelerated in the high-altitude environment. "Nighthawk, your physiological indicators are concerning," Martinez warned. "Consider restoring partial life support." "Negative, Control," Jessica replied, her voice steady despite the increasing strain. "Maintaining maximum stealth is priority. I can handle the conditions." It was here that Jessica's psychological profile, the very qualities Blackwood had deemed weaknesses, proved invaluable. Her exceptional emotional regulation and stress response allowed her to function clearly despite deteriorating physical conditions. Where a more aggressive pilot might have panicked or made rash decisions, Jessica remained methodical and focused. The minutes ticked by as the Nighthawk continued its desperate journey toward the Sea of Japan. Jessica's vision began to blur at the edges as oxygen deprivation set in, but she compensated by relying more heavily on the neural interface. allowing the aircraft to interpret her intentions rather than requiring precise physical inputs. Approaching coastline, she reported, her words slightly slurred. 20 kilometers to international waters. Nighthawk, be advised, Martinez responded urgently. We're detecting increased radar activity. 2 fighter squadrons have been scrambled from Vladivostok. Intercept course. The enemy had finally detected her. With her compromised systems, outrunning or outfighting the approaching fighters was impossible. Jessica had perhaps 5 minutes before they reached her position. Understood, Control. She acknowledged, requesting permission to implement final protocol. There was a heavy silence before General Daniels himself responded. Permission granted, Nighthawk. It's been an honor. Jessica took a labored breath in the oxygen-thin cockpit. Likewise, sir, tell Commander Blackwood. Gentleness has its place in warfare after all. With those words, Jessica initiated the Nighthawk's final protocol, a sequence designed to protect the revolutionary technology from falling into enemy hands. The aircraft would maintain its course until reaching international waters, then execute a controlled descent into the deepest part of the Sea of Japan, where the pressure would trigger a complete molecular breakdown of its advanced components. As the coastline appeared on her horizon, Jessica felt an unexpected sense of peace. The mission had succeeded. Millions would live because she had flown true to her nature with precision, empathy, and gentle hands on the controls of the most advanced aircraft ever built. Crossing into international waters now, she reported, her voice fading. Mission complete. Nighthawk out. The last thing Jessica remembered was the vast expanse of the Sea of Japan, spreading out beneath her as consciousness finally slipped. Away, in the control room, Martinez watched as the Nighthawk signal disappeared from their screens. Beside her, General Daniel stood in silent tribute, his usual stoic expression replaced by genuine sorrow. She did it, Martinez said quietly. The impossible mission. And she did it because she was too gentle for combat flying. Daniels nodded gravely, the finest pilot I've ever seen. Make sure Blackwood and his entire command know exactly what happened here today. I want them to understand exactly what kind of aviator they rejected. The mission remained classified at the highest levels, the world never knowing how close it had come to catastrophe or the sacrifice made to prevent it. But within military aviation circles, the story began to spread like a legend, whispered. Between pilots and instructors, the tale of the gentle pilot who flew the suicide mission that saved America. Darkness gave way to the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. Jessica blinked slowly, her consciousness returning in fragmented pieces. The steady beep of medical equipment filled her ears, and the sterile scent of antiseptic hung in the air. Her throat felt raw, her body weighted with exhaustion. She's waking up, a voice said nearby. Get the general. Jessica tried to speak but found her mouth blocked by a breathing tube. Panic momentarily flared until a gentle hand touched her shoulder. Easy, Reeves. You're safe. The tube will come out soon. Her vision cleared enough to recognize Commander Martinez standing beside the hospital bed. Dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept in days. You've been unconscious for nearly 2 weeks, Martinez explained, pressing a button to elevate the head of Jessica's bed slightly. Do you remember anything about what happened? Jessica managed a small nod, memories flooding back the mission. The facility, the EMP deployment, implementing Eco Sierra protocol, and then darkness as she'd crossed into international waters. By all calculations, she should be dead at the bottom of the Sea of Japan. A doctor entered the room, followed by 2 nurses who efficiently removed Jessica's breathing tube. After several painful coughs and sips of water, she finally managed to speak. How? She rasped, the single word conveying her confusion. Martinez smiled. That's classified beyond even my clearance level. All I know is that somewhere between you losing consciousness and the Nighthawk's scheduled descent into the sea, Something extraordinary happened. The door opened again, and General Daniels entered, his uniform immaculate as always, but his face showing signs of stress and fatigue. "Cadet Reeves," he said, his normally stern voice softened with what might have been respect. "Welcome back to the land of the living." Jessica attempted to sit straighter, military discipline ingrained even in her weakened state. "Sir, I don't understand. The extraction protocol wasn't supposed to. I'm well aware of what was and wasn't supposed to happen." Daniels interrupted. "What matters is that you completed the mission and somehow survived what was, by all assessments, a 0 probability extraction scenario." A middle-aged man in a civilian suit entered behind the general, carrying a leather briefcase. He had intelligent eyes and moved with the careful precision of someone accustomed to dealing with sensitive information. "This is Mr. Sullivan from the National Security Council." Daniels introduced him. "He has some information for you, and then some questions if you're up to it." Sullivan approached the bed, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Reeves, first, let me express the gratitude of the President and the entire national security apparatus. Your mission prevented what would have been the most devastating attack on American soil in our history." Jessica nodded slightly, still trying to process her unexpected survival. "As for how you're here," Sullivan continued, "we can share limited details. After you lost consciousness, the Nighthawk's emergency systems activated a previously undisclosed protocol. The aircraft maintained its stealth profile, but diverted to a contingency extraction point in the Sea of Japan, where a specialized recovery team was waiting." "That wasn't part of the mission brief," Jessica said, her voice still rough. Sullivan exchanged glances with General Daniels before responding. "No, it wasn't. Because we couldn't risk the information being captured if you were shot down over enemy territory. The extraction team was deployed as a contingency with less than a 5% estimated chance of success." Jessica absorbed this information, understanding the cold calculation behind it. They hadn't lied about it being a suicide mission. They had simply deployed an extremely unlikely backup plan without informing her. "What happened to the facility?" she asked, focusing on what mattered most. "Completely neutralized," General Daniels answered. "Your EMP delivery was perfect. It disabled all systems long enough for a specialized team to infiltrate and destroy the biological weapon before it could be deployed. Intelligence estimates 30 million American lives were saved." Jessica closed her eyes briefly, relief washing over her. The mission had succeeded. Whatever else had happened, that was what mattered most. "There's something else you should know," Martinez said, moving closer to the bed. "Word of your mission has spread, not the classified details, of course, but the general outcome. You've become something of a legend in certain military circles." Sullivan nodded in confirmation. "The President has authorized the release of a heavily redacted version of events. The public narrative acknowledges that a female pilot, previously rejected from tactical training, completed a mission of vital national importance that more traditional combat aviators couldn't have accomplished." Jessica's brow furrowed. "Why would they authorize releasing even that much?" "Because," General Daniels said with unusual directness, "some lessons need to be learned institutionally. The old guard needs to understand that their narrow definition of what makes an effective combat pilot nearly cost us everything." A nurse entered to check Jessica's vital signs, politely indicating that the visitor should keep the meeting brief to allow for rest. "There will be a formal commendation ceremony once you're recovered," Sullivan informed her, opening his briefcase and removing an official-looking document. "But in the meantime, the President wanted you to have this." He handed the document to Jessica. It was a presidential order promoting her to the rank of captain, effective immediately, along with the authorization for the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest military decoration. "This is..." Jessica trailed off. "Overwhelmed. Well-deserved," Martinez finished for her. "And there's more. but that can wait until you're stronger." As the visitors prepared to leave, Jessica called out, "Commander Martinez?" What happened to Commander Blackwood and the others who rejected me from the tactical program? Martinez paused at the door, a small smile playing at her lips. "They've been reassigned to review the entire pilot selection methodology. Under your new training protocols." "My protocols?" Jessica repeated in confusion. "We'll discuss it when you're recovered," Martinez replied. "Rest now, Captain Reeves. That's an order." After they departed, Jessica lay back against the pillows, trying to make sense of everything. She was alive, the mission had succeeded, and somehow her failure to gain acceptance into the tactical program had led to the most important flight mission in recent history. 3 weeks later, Jessica stood before a mirror in her quarters at Andrews Air Force Base, adjusting the medals on her dress uniform. Her recovery had progressed rapidly, though doctors warned she might never regain full lung capacity due to the oxygen deprivation she'd experienced. A knock at the door preceded Martinez's entrance. The commander was also in dress uniform, ready for the ceremony that would take place in 1 hour. "How are you feeling, Captain?" Martinez asked. "Physically or emotionally?" Jessica replied, with a small smile. "Both, I suppose." Jessica took a measured breath. "Physically, getting stronger each day. Emotionally, still processing. It feels surreal, like I'm watching someone else's life unfold." Martinez nodded in understanding. "That's normal after what you've experienced. But there's something you should prepare yourself for today. Commander Blackwood will be at the ceremony." Jessica's hand stilled on her uniform. "I see. He requested to attend personally. After reviewing the mission data, he submitted a formal acknowledgement of error in his evaluation methodology. It's unprecedented in his 30-year career." "I never wanted to prove him wrong," Jessica said quietly. "I just wanted to fly." "And now you will," Martinez assured her. "On your terms, with your strengths recognized as assets rather than liabilities." The ceremony was held in a secure auditorium at the Pentagon, attended by high-ranking military officials, select members of Congress, and the specialists who had developed the Nighthawk program. Jessica's parents, who had been told only that their daughter had completed a mission of exceptional importance, sat in the front row, pride evident on their faces. As Jessica stood at attention while the Secretary of Defense read the citation for her Distinguished Service Cross, she spotted Commander Blackwood in the audience. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a slight nod, the closest thing to an apology his rigid military bearing would allow in this setting. After the medal was pinned to her chest, Jessica was invited to speak. She approached the podium, acutely aware of the historical significance of the moment. Her prepared remarks sat before her, but as she looked out at the assembly, she set them aside. "When I was rejected from advanced tactical training," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I was told I was too gentle for combat aviation. That my tendency to seek non-confrontational solutions was a weakness, not a strength." The audience was silent, many shifting uncomfortably at this direct reference to her earlier rejection. "I stand before you today not to prove that assessment wrong, but to suggest that perhaps we've been defining strength too narrowly in military aviation. The mission I completed didn't succeed despite my so-called gentleness, it succeeded because of it." Jessica paused, gathering her thoughts. The Nighthawk aircraft represents a new paradigm in aviation technology, but its true potential could only be realized by a pilot willing to work with the aircraft rather than dominate it, to sense patterns rather than force outcomes, to find harmony with systems instead of overwhelming them with brute inputs. She glanced toward Commander Blackwood, who was watching her intently. "These qualities have traditionally been dismissed as feminine, as soft, as gentle, and therefore as less valuable in combat scenarios. My experience suggests otherwise. It suggests that there are missions for which these precise qualities are Not just beneficial, but essential. Jessica looked down at the medal now adorning her uniform. I accept this honor with gratitude, but also with hope that my experience might open doors for other pilots whose strengths don't fit traditional molds, whose abilities might be overlooked because they don't match our preconceived notions of what a combat aviator should be. As Jessica concluded her remarks, the auditorium erupted in applause. General Daniels approached the podium next, waiting for the room to quiet before speaking. Captain Reeves demonstrated exceptional courage and skill under circumstances few of us can imagine, he stated formally. In recognition of her unique contributions to national security and aviation advancement, I am authorized to announce the establishment of the Nighthawk Training Initiative. Murmurs spread through the audience as screens around the auditorium displayed the official emblem of the new program. This specialized training pathway will identify and develop pilots with non-traditional aptitudes for next-generation aircraft. Captain Reeves will serve as the program's first director, effective immediately. Jessica struggled to maintain her composure at this unexpected announcement. She had anticipated returning to active flight status, perhaps continuing with specialized missions, but not this, the opportunity to reshape pilot selection and training at a fundamental level. After the ceremony concluded, Jessica found herself surrounded by well-wishers and officials eager to discuss the new initiative. As the crowd thinned, Commander Blackwood approached, his expression solemn. "Captain Reeves," he said formally, extending his hand, "congratulations on your commendation. Well deserved." Jessica accepted the handshake, noting the subtle changes in his demeanor, the absence of the dismissive confidence that had characterized their previous interaction. "Thank you, Commander," she replied evenly. Blackwood hesitated, clearly struggling with what to say next. "I've reviewed the mission data extensively. Your performance was illuminating." Coming from him, it was tantamount to an effusive apology. "I hope it was," Jessica said, neither accepting nor rejecting the implied contrition. "The Nighthawk Initiative will need support from traditional training commands to succeed. There's room for both approaches in modern aviation." Blackwood nodded stiffly. "My command will cooperate fully. I have much to learn about identifying potential in unexpected forms." As he walked away, Martinez approached with 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to Jessica. "That looked painful for him," she observed with a slight smirk. "Paradigm shifts usually are," Jessica replied, taking a small sip, "but necessary." "Speaking of paradigm shifts," Martinez said, lowering her voice, "there's something else you should know. The Nighthawk aircraft that brought you home wasn't the same one you flew on the mission." Jessica nearly choked on her champagne. "What?" "The original Nighthawk followed its program protocol and descended into the Sea of Japan after you lost consciousness. The aircraft that arrived at the extraction point was its twin, the only other prototype, which was supposedly still in development at the testing facility." "I don't understand," Jessica said, struggling to process this information. "How could it have deployed without authorization? Who flew it?" Martinez shook her head. "That's where things get strange. According to all records, it deployed autonomously, without pilot input. The AI navigation system apparently initiated an independent rescue protocol that wasn't part of its program parameters." "That's impossible," Jessica whispered. "The Nighthawk's AI was advanced, but nowhere near that level of autonomous decision-making." "And yet," Martinez said, watching her carefully, "that's exactly what happened. The leading theory is that your neural interface with the primary aircraft somehow created a connection that transferred to the secondary unit. In essence, your consciousness, your intention to survive imprinted on the backup aircraft systems." Jessica fell silent, the implications staggering. During those final moments of oxygen deprivation, had her connection with the aircraft somehow transcended the physical limitations of the technology? Had her gentle approach to the neural interface created a bond that the system's designers never anticipated? "Why are you telling me this now?" she finally asked. "Because," Martinez replied, "the Nighthawk Initiative isn't just about finding pilots with your psychological profile. It's about exploring this unexpected connection between pilot and aircraft, a connection that your particular attributes made possible." Before Jessica could respond, her parents approached, eager to spend time with their daughter. Martinez excused herself, leaving Jessica to navigate the complicated balance between sharing her pride with her family while maintaining the classified nature of her mission. Later that evening, Jessica stood alone on the balcony of her hotel room, gazing at the Washington Monument illuminated against the night sky. Her thoughts returned to that moment in the cockpit when consciousness had slipped away, the peace she had felt, believing her sacrifice had meaning, had purpose. Her phone buzzed with a message from Martinez. 0800 tomorrow. Pentagon Room E317. First Nighthawk Initiative candidate interviews. Your evaluation methodologies have already been approved. Jessica smiled, thinking of the pilots who would come through her program, individuals whose potential might have been overlooked in traditional settings, whose unique attributes might make them perfect for aircraft not yet designed. In the distance, she heard the sound of fighter jets on a night training exercise, their powerful engines echoing across the Capitol. Once, that sound had represented everything she aspired to be, a combat pilot in the traditional mold, forcing the aircraft to bend to her will. Now she understood differently. True mastery wasn't about domination but harmony, not about power but precision, not about aggression but awareness. The qualities Commander Blackwood had dismissed as weaknesses, her empathy, her preference for finesse over force, her gentleness, had not only saved her life but potentially millions of others. More importantly, they had opened a new frontier in aviation, one where the relationship between pilot and aircraft transcended mere operation, to become something approaching symbiosis. Jessica's hand drifted to the metal on her dress uniform, tracing its outline. The recognition was gratifying, but the true victory lay elsewhere, in the knowledge that future pilots would never be rejected for being too gentle, that her experience had forever expanded the definition of what made an exceptional aviator. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new pilots to evaluate, new boundaries to push. But tonight, Jessica Reeves, once deemed unsuitable for advanced flight training, now the youngest program director in military aviation history, allowed herself a moment to appreciate how far she had come. The gentle pilot who had flown the suicide mission that saved America now had the opportunity to reshape military aviation itself, not through force, but through understanding, not through dominance, but through insight, not despite her nature, but because of it. As Jessica turned to go inside, a distant aircraft caught her eye, a sleek, dark shape moving silently across the starlit sky, almost invisible except to those who knew exactly what to look for. She smiled, wondering if perhaps the boundary between human and machine, between pilot and aircraft, was more permeable than anyone had imagined. Whatever mysteries the Nighthawk Initiative might uncover in the years ahead, one truth had already been established beyond question. Gentleness had its place in warfare after all. And sometimes, it made all the difference between victory and defeat, between life and death, between destruction and salvation. Jessica raised her hand in a silent salute to the vanishing aircraft, then turned away from the balcony. Tomorrow awaited, and with it, the chance to ensure that no pilot with the right qualities would ever again be told they were too gentle to fly. 5 years later, the observation deck of the Nighthawk Initiative's New Mexico training facility offered a panoramic view of the vast desert landscape. Jessica Reeves stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching as a formation of experimental aircraft traced impossible patterns across the morning sky. Their movements were synchronized with a precision that would have seemed supernatural to traditional aviators' banking turns that defied conventional G-force limitations, rapid acceleration without the expected engine flare, and most remarkably, a complete absence of the thunderous noise typically associated with advanced fighter craft. Beautiful, aren't they? Asked Dr. Eliza Chun, the initiative's chief neurological specialist, as she joined Jessica at the window. Harmony Flight completed the quantum mesh formation in record time today. Their neural synchronization is approaching 98%. Jessica nodded, pride evident in her expression. They're redefining what's possible. Remember when the Air Force brass insisted human pilots couldn't maintain neural links for more than 30 minutes without cognitive strain? And now we have 5 pilots maintaining full synchronization for over 3 hours. Dr. Chun replied with a satisfied smile. The old guard is running out of objections. In the 5 years since its establishment, the Nighthawk Initiative had evolved from a specialized training program into a revolutionary approach to military aviation. What had begun with Jessica's unique connection to the experimental aircraft had expanded into a comprehensive methodology for identifying, training, and deploying pilots with exceptional neural integration capabilities. Director Reeves, a young lieutenant, approached, tablet in hand. The Secretary of Defense has arrived for the demonstration. She's waiting in the briefing room with the Joint Chiefs. Thank you, Lieutenant, Jessica replied, straightening her uniform jacket. Please inform them I'll be there momentarily. As the lieutenant departed, Dr. Chun gave Jessica's arm a supportive squeeze. Big day. The future of the program rides on this demonstration. The future of a lot more than that, Jessica responded quietly. The 2 women made their way through the facility's sleek corridors, passing laboratories where scientists monitored neural activity patterns and training rooms where pilot candidates practiced meditation techniques alongside advanced flight simulators. The Nighthawk Initiative had transformed from a military curiosity into a multidisciplinary revolution, combining neuroscience, aviation technology, and psychological training methodologies that would have been dismissed as fringe theories just years earlier. Jessica entered the briefing room to find Secretary of Defense Helena Garrison engaged in conversation with General Michael Liang, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Also present were 3 stern-faced senators from the Armed Services Committee and, to Jessica's surprise, a familiar figure who now wore the stars of a full General Richard Blackwood, her former adversary, now one of the initiative's strongest advocates following his remarkable change of perspective. Director Reeves, Secretary. Garrison greeted her warmly. We're eager to see what your team has prepared for us today. Jessica nodded respectfully. Madam Secretary, gentlemen, thank you for making the trip to witness the demonstration firsthand. What we'll be showing you today represents a paradigm shift in aerial combat capabilities. Senator Hartwell, a silver-haired veteran with a reputation for skepticism toward military innovation, leaned forward. I've read the reports, Director, but I remain unconvinced. The funding requirements for this program are astronomical, and many of my colleagues question whether these neural integration techniques offer substantive advantages over traditional combat aircraft. Jessica had anticipated this reaction. In the years since establishing the initiative, she had become adept at navigating the political aspects of military innovation, a skill that had once seemed as foreign to her as combat piloting had seemed to Commander Blackwood. Senator, I understand your concerns, she replied diplomatically, which is why today's demonstration has been specifically designed to address them. We'll be conducting a live comparison between our Nighthawk Squadron and the Air Force's elite Raptor team flying the latest F-35 variants. General Blackwood stepped forward. If I may, Senator Hartwell, 5 years ago, I was the program's most vocal critic. I believed combat aviation required a specific psychological profile, one that emphasized aggression and split-second decision-making under pressure. I rejected Captain Reeves from advanced tactical training for being too gentle for combat. Roles. The room fell silent as Blackwood continued, his military bearing unchanged but his perspective transformed. Today, I consider that the most significant professional error of my 35-year career. What Director Reeves and her team have developed isn't just an alternative approach to pilot selection. It's the future of aerial warfare itself. Jessica nodded gratefully to Blackwood before turning to the large display screen on the wall. Rather than tell you about our advances, allow me to show you. We've prepared a combat simulation pitting 4 of our Nighthawk pilots against 8 of the Air Force's most accomplished F-35 aviators. With a gesture, Jessica activated the screen, revealing a tactical display of the test range, extending across 50 miles of restricted airspace. 2 groups of aircraft appeared as distinct markers, blue icons representing the conventional F-35s and green showing the experimental Nighthawk units. The objective is straightforward, Jessica explained. Each team must eliminate the opposing aircraft while protecting the designated civilian area. The F-35s have numerical superiority and are armed with the latest targeting systems. Our Nighthawk team is outnumbered, but employing the neural integration techniques we've developed. Senator Hartwell scoffed. 2-to-1 odds? Hardly seems fair to your pilots, Director. Jessica allowed herself a small smile. We offered the Air Force 3-to-1 odds, Senator. They declined. Secretary Garrison raised an eyebrow at this revelation while General Liang shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The simulation begins in 2 minutes, Jessica continued. With your permission, I'd like to open a communication channel to the Nighthawk team leader. After receiving the Secretary's nod, Jessica activated the comm system. Nighthawk lead. This is Director Reeves. Our guests are in position for the demonstration. Status report. Director, this is Nighthawk lead, came a calm female voice. Squadron is in formation, and neural integration protocols are active at 93%. Synchronization. We are ready to proceed. Jessica recognized the voice of Major Sophia Wright, one of the initiative's earliest recruits, a pilot who, like Jessica herself, had been passed over for advanced combat roles despite exceptional technical skills. Wright had been deemed too analytical and insufficiently aggressive by traditional evaluation standards, yet she now led the program's most accomplished flight team. Acknowledged, Nighthawk lead. Simulation begins on my mark, Jessica replied before addressing the room again. What you're about to witness is not simply skilled piloting, but a fundamentally different relationship between human and aircraft. Our pilots don't just fly these machines, they integrate with them at a neural level. General Liang leaned forward. And this provides a tactical advantage? It eliminates the millisecond delays between thought and action, Jessica explained. More importantly, it allows our pilots to share perception and decision-making in real time. They function as a single distributed intelligence rather than individual units requiring verbal coordination. The tactical display showed the F-35S moving into an aggressive search pattern while the Nighthawk units remained in tight formation, seemingly vulnerable. Simulation commencing in 3, 2, 1. Mark, Jessica announced. What followed left even the seasoned military leaders speechless. The moment the simulation began, the Nighthawk formation dissolved into a complex, flowing pattern that seemed to anticipate the F-35's movements before they occurred. Where conventional pilots relied on radar, radio communication, and visual confirmation, the Nighthawk team operated with a synchronized awareness that bordered on precognition. My God, whispered Senator Hartwell as the display showed a Nighthawk effortlessly evading a missile lock that should have been inescapable. How are they doing that? Neural integration, Dr. Chen explained, stepping forward. Major Wright isn't just aware of her own aircraft's position. She simultaneously perceives the location and status of every Nighthawk in her squadron. When one pilot detects a threat, all of them respond instantaneously without the need for communication. Within minutes, the simulation's outcome became apparent. Despite being outnumbered 2-1, the Nighthawk squadron systematically neutralized the F-35s while remaining virtually untouchable. The conventional pilots, despite their elite training and advanced aircraft, simply couldn't match the integrated awareness and response time of the neurally linked Nighthawk team. Simulation complete, Jessica announced as the final F-35 was tagged as eliminated. 8-0 in favor of the Nighthawk squadron. Total engagement time, 7 minutes 22 seconds. The room remained silent as the implications sank in. What they had just witnessed wasn't merely an improved combat technique. It was a revolutionary advancement that rendered conventional aerial warfare potentially obsolete. Secretary Garrison was the first to recover her composure. Director Reeves, the tactical advantages are evident. But what about the human factor? What does this neural integration process require from your pilots? Jessica had anticipated this question. Madam Secretary, this is where our selection criteria diverge most significantly from traditional combat aviation. The qualities that make a pilot suitable for neural integration are often the opposite of what conventional programs seek. She gestured to Dr. Chun, who brought up a series of brain scans on the display. Traditional combat pilot selection favors rapid decision makers with high stress tolerance and a certain psychological aggression, Dr. Chun explained. By contrast, our most successful neural integrators exhibit exceptional emotional regulation, high empathy, and a natural tendency toward cooperative rather than competitive problem solving. The very qualities that got me rejected from tactical training, Jessica added quietly. We're not replacing conventional combat pilots, Madam Secretary. We're identifying an entirely different category of aviator for missions that require a different approach. General Blackwood cleared his throat. If I may add, we found that approximately 20% of pilots rejected from traditional combat roles for being too cerebral or insufficiently aggressive score in the highest percentile for neural integration aptitude. In other words, Jessica continued, we've been systematically excluding some of our most promising aviators because they didn't fit the traditional combat pilot profile. Senator Hartwell, previously the most skeptical, now leaned forward with interest. And the international implications? If we develop this capability, our adversaries will surely follow. Actually, Senator, that's where our advantage is most secure, Jessica responded. The neural integration technology is only half of the equation. The human selection and training methodology is equally crucial, and it runs counter to the military aviation culture of most of our potential adversaries. Explain, requested Secretary Garrison. Russia, China, and several other nations emphasize rigid hierarchy and aggressive psychological profiles in their combat pilot selection, Jessica elaborated. Their military cultures would resist implementing a system that values the very traits they've traditionally eliminated from their programs. General Liang nodded thoughtfully. A technological advantage can be copied. A cultural advantage is much harder to replicate. The briefing continued for another hour, with Jessica and her team addressing questions about pilot safety, training methodology, and strategic deployment scenarios. By the time they concluded, even Senator Hartwell appeared convinced of the program's value. One final question, Director Reeves, Secretary Garrison said as the meeting drew to a close. You've clearly demonstrated the Nighthawk Initiative's potential for conventional combat scenarios. But what about the kind of mission that brought you here in the first place? The high-risk, specialized operations were traditional approaches. Fail? Jessica exchanged glances with General Blackwood before responding. With respect, Madam Secretary, that information remains classified at the highest level. What I can tell you is that since the original Nighthawk mission 5 years ago, our pilots have successfully completed 17 operations deemed zero probability by conventional standards. Secretary Garrison's eyes widened slightly at this revelation. I see. Then I believe we have everything we need to make our recommendation to the President. Thank you for your time, Director Reeves. As the dignitaries filed out of the briefing room, General Blackwood lingered behind. Once they were alone, his formal demeanor softened slightly. You know, when I rejected you from that program years ago, I thought I was protecting the integrity of combat aviation, he said, a hint of regret in his voice. I couldn't have been more wrong, Jessica smiled. With respect, General, you were right about one thing: I wasn't suited for traditional combat roles. You just couldn't see that was a strength, not a weakness. Blackwood nodded thoughtfully. A lesson I've taken to heart. The funding will go through Jessica. The secretary was impressed, and even Hartwell is convinced. The Nighthawk initiative has a secure future. After Blackwood departed, Jessica made her way to the flight deck, where the Nighthawk squadron was returning from the demonstration. 4 pilots in specialized flight suits emerged from their aircraft, their movements exhibiting the unusual synchronization that often persisted for hours after neural integration exercises. Major Sophia Wright approached, removing her helmet to reveal short-cropped hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. How did it go with the brass, Director? Better than expected, Jessica replied. You made quite an impression. Senator Hartwell's jaw nearly hit the floor when you executed that impossible turn to evade Raptor 3's missile lock. Wright smiled slightly. It wasn't impossible. Just required seeing things differently. That's precisely what this program is about, Jessica. Agreed. Seeing things differently. As the other pilots joined them, Jessica noted the diverse group that made up the elite Nighthawk squadron individuals who would never have advanced in traditional combat aviation. Lieutenant Park had been deemed too cautious despite perfect technical scores. Captain Rodriguez had been criticized for excessive consideration of collateral damage scenarios. Commander Singh had been described as pathologically averse to unnecessary risk. Yet together, neurally integrated with their aircraft and each other, they had just outperformed the military's most elite conventional pilots by a margin that would fundamentally alter the future of aerial warfare. Debrief in 30 minutes, Jessica instructed the team. Then I have some news about our next deployment that you'll want to hear. After the pilots departed, Jessica took a moment alone on the flight deck, gazing at the revolutionary aircraft that had emerged from the original Nighthawk prototype. Their sleek, almost organic design reflected the philosophy behind their creation: not weapons to be controlled, but extensions of human consciousness to be integrated with. Jessica's hand unconsciously reached for the small silver compass pendant she still wore, her grandfather's gift that had accompanied her on that first impossible mission 5 years ago. She had come full circle from a rejected cadet told she was too gentle for combat flying to the director of a program that was redefining the very nature of aerial warfare. Later that evening, Jessica sat alone in her office reviewing the day's events when an alert appeared on her secure terminal, a CONA priority message from the Pentagon Special Operations Division. She entered her authentication code and read the terse communication with growing concern. A new threat had emerged, one that conventional forces couldn't address without risking catastrophic escalation. The Joint Chiefs were requesting the Nighthawk Initiative's unique capabilities for a mission with global implications. Jessica activated the secure communication system. This is Director Reeves. Assemble the Harmony flight team immediately. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, Major Wright and her pilots had gathered in the secure briefing room, their expressions serious as Jessica outlined the situation. This operation goes beyond anything we've attempted previously, she concluded. The risk factors are extreme, and I cannot guarantee that neural integration will provide sufficient advantage against these defenses. The room fell silent as the pilots processed the information. Then Major Wright spoke, her calm voice carrying the conviction that had made her the program's leading aviator. With respect, Director, that's what they said about your mission 5 years ago. Too gentle for combat flying, impossible extraction scenario, zero probability of success. Wright looked around at her team, receiving nods of agreement. We've spent 5 years proving that the impossible becomes possible when you approach problems differently. This mission is exactly what the Nighthawk Initiative was created for. Jessica studied the determined faces before her, recognizing in each pilot the qualities that traditional combat programs had dismissed: thoughtfulness, empathy, precision, restraint. Qualities that, when combined with neural integration technology, transformed them from rejected candidates into the most effective aerial combat team in military history. "You're right," Jessica acknowledged. "But as your director, I need to be clear about the risks. This mission is classified as a potential one-way deployment. There are no guarantees of extraction." Commander Singh, the oldest of the group at 38, spoke up. "Director Reeves, you've told us the story of how you volunteered for a suicide mission because you believed your unique approach might succeed where traditional methods would fail. You've taught us that sometimes the gentlest hands are the ones that can navigate the most dangerous paths." Lieutenant Park nodded in agreement. "We understand the risks, Director. We also understand what's at stake." Jessica looked at each pilot in turn, seeing not just determination, but a profound understanding of what made them different and what made them essential. These weren't traditional combat aviators seeking glory or driven by aggression. They were something new: pilots whose strength lay in connection rather than domination, in harmony rather than force. "Very well," she said finally. "Prepare for mission briefing at 0400. Full neural integration protocols will be implemented." As the pilots departed to rest before the mission, Jessica remained in the briefing room, studying the intelligence reports. The parallels to her own mission 5 years earlier were unmistakable. Another impossible task, another instance where traditional combat approaches would fail, another opportunity for the qualities once dismissed as weaknesses to prove their essential value. She thought back to that moment in Commander Blackwood's office when he had rejected her from tactical training for being too gentle for combat flying. How that moment of failure had ultimately led her to this place, directing a program that was transforming military aviation and proving that true strength came in many forms. Tomorrow, another team of 2 gentle pilots would embark on a mission deemed impossible by conventional standards. They would integrate with their aircraft and each other at a neural level, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. And they would demonstrate once again that sometimes the qualities dismissed as weaknesses are precisely what make the difference between success and failure, between life and death, between war and peace. Jessica closed the intelligence file and prepared to brief her team on the mission that lay ahead. Whatever the outcome, the Nighthawk Initiative had already proven its most important point. There was more than one way to be strong, more than one path to courage, more than one definition of what made an exceptional pilot. Sometimes being too gentle was exactly what the world needed most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.